Bright and sunny, Cinda.
Yes.
Today's been a good day here. What about you?
Oh my gosh, it's been so pretty. Fall is in the air.
I know. I was driving down the island. As you know, I live on an island. I was driving down the island last Sunday, and I realized there's still a lot of color yet to come in the leaves. I mean, they're still kind of green, so there's still a lot of fall left, according to the colors of the leaves, which is
So
great.
I noticed that you're wearing pink.
I am.
So hopefully you aren't thinking that we're going to be talking about anything negative today that needs to be transmuted into self-worth or self-love based
Yeah,
upon an earlier conversation we had.
we're going to talk about a difficult, a painful situation you were in.
Okay.
I'm here holding the space of think pink.
Oh, I love you.
Is that okay?
What are we going to talk about today?
I think was it 2 years ago that I was going to come and visit you and do a writer's a week, a little writer retreat, because I was writing, you were writing. And lo and behold, during a family reunion, a week or two before I was going to come, or maybe a month, but not very long before I was going to come, I got a message from you that said, you can't come because I have had a, a very traumatic experience during my family's vacation at our home cabin, at our family cabin.
Mhm.
So and I might not remember all the details correctly, but you're there and you're with your family, and there's, there's hikes you make. These are places you know really well. You've probably been going there for a lot of years. And as you're coming down from this hike, and there are people, kind of not all everybody, but there was a group of you, and you were kind of in that group. And as I remember, you needed to go to the bathroom. As happens when we're out in nature, right? So you veer off the little path that you know. Others continue on because they know, and you know. And so in that decision, and you veer off the path, what happened?
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. So we're going to talk about that. Oh, God. All
Oh,
right.
that's why
So
think pink.
I love you. So,
And
okay.
I even have my smudge stick going.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. You know, so it was August a couple of years ago, and we have a family cabin that's up in Eastern Oregon that's been in our family for generations, and there's this beautiful 12-mile, very difficult hike up switchbacks up to a mountain where there is a mountain lake at the very top. And we got a little bit of a late start, and it was actually over a Labor Day weekend. And so it was late August or early September, and it was incredibly hot.
Mm.
And the whole side of the mountain just faces full on sun. We left without enough water. We left too late in the day, which meant coming back down, we were in the peak of the heat. And we're at, so it's 6 miles up and it's 6 miles down. And it took me a while to get up because I'm not in fantastic shape. But on the way down, there was all the young college kids were, going far. First of all, there's 17 of us on this hike, okay? 17 of us on this trail. And let me just make it known that wolves had been sighted. There was bear scat everywhere. It was bow hunting season, so there was bow hunters in the woods. Potentially, we ran into them at the bottom of the trail, but not on the trail. And it's also known cougar territory. Okay, so we usually like to hike together. But on the way down, I had run out of water. I don't do well in high altitude, and I was incredibly hot. And I think that I started to go through some form of heat stroke. and because I was really nauseated, sick to my stomach, I mean, really sick to my stomach, dizzy, and so thirsty, but no water, right? And we still had miles to go before we were at the bottom of the trail back to the car where we had at least beer to drink. And so the college kids take off down the hill. We have dogs with us, and it was so hot on this trail that the dogs refused to hike anymore. And so the bigger, stronger men were actually having to carry the dogs down the trail. Behind me, the ages went from like a sophomore in high school to my 76-year-old aunt. So my 76-year-old aunt and my uncle that's in his 60s, they were hiking together behind me. And I, like you said, I needed to go to the restroom, so I veered off the trail, and people were like, well, should we wait? No, 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 I know how to get down. So I really, what I wanted to do was just sit in the shade of a brush to cool down, but there was no shade. And so when I tried to start hiking again, I realized I was in trouble. I was in a lot of trouble, and I was going to pass out. And if I passed out, my aunt and uncle are going to have to deal with me when they come up to my body. So I decided to cut through the shrubbery, the high mountain shrubs, to all the different switchbacks. I was just going to go straight down the steep hill and meet up with the different switchbacks. And when I met up with the first switchback, I was elated. I'm like, oh my God, I just saved myself hours of misery. This is amazing. And then I did it again. I came up to the switchback coming back, and I'm like, oh, this is so brilliant. I did it again. And I slid down a ravine that was so steep. And I ended up in this creek. And this creek is complete, I mean, it's a full-on river, but it's a small river, and it's completely overgrown with bushes. When you're on this hike, you see the creek. You don't see the creek, you know where it is because you can hear it, but it's completely overgrown. So now at least I'm in shade, and I am and I have water. So I dive in the creek, I lay in the creek, I fill my canteen up with water, I drink and I drink and I drink, and I don't care if there's giardia, I don't care. All I know is I am in shade, I am hydrating, and I am getting cool. And I laid there for quite a few minutes in this stream as it just ran over me, cooling down. And I was so elated because I was so sick prior, and now I'm in pure bliss and pure joy. And I think that that's key to this, is pure bliss, pure joy. But then I also knew that I had to get out of there. And so I turned around to climb back up the steep ravine to get back up to the trail, and I kept sliding down because it was so steep. It was so steep. So I decided to follow the river down, and and it wasn't easy because it was so overgrown, and I'm weaving in and out, and I'm walking on either side of, trying to take the easiest route following this creek. Now I knew that if I followed the creek to the very end, it would come to the road that then I could walk up to where the cars are parked, but I didn't know how or where this creek would take me. I didn't know if there'd be a waterfall. I didn't know if it would meander for miles more. I kept sending out waves. I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm at the river, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm at the river. I was silently saying that. Every time there looked like there might be a place I could hike out, I would try. And so one time I crossed the river back up to where the ravine was and tried to climb. And in that moment, the ground let loose, and like a landslide, started to slip back down. And actually, I start laughing. And I say out loud, okay, I guess I'm not supposed to leave the creek yet. Laugh, laugh. And when I turn, I twist my ankle. I fall forward into the creek on both knees and slice my leg wide open at my kneecap. I lean back, look at my leg. I can see bone. It's not broken, you know, but the skin is broken and I can see my kneecap. And I'm like, oh, this isn't good. This isn't good. So I tried to move and I could still move my leg. Nothing was horribly wrong, just this huge gash. And I thought, okay, I got to get the hell out of Dodge, right? I got to get out of here. And there wasn't a lot of bleeding. Now, either it's because the creek water was washing the blood away, or it was so cold that it didn't bleed. And the water was so cold because it's mountain water. So quite a few years prior, my uncle went on a hike, and a different uncle that was, you know, he went on a hike and he got lost. He had dementia and he got lost, and his body wasn't found until a year later, and they found his remains. But there was a search party, search and rescue. There was dogs. No one could find him. And not on this same trail. This was somewhere totally different. But in that moment, I decided to ask him for help. And I was like, Uncle Mike, once upon a time, you didn't know where you were. You didn't know how to get out, but now you see all. Get me the hell out of here. You know, redeem yourself. Get me the hell out of here. Save me. I'm hurt. I need to get out of here. And so I'm, you know, trying to maneuver down this river, slippery rocks. Sometimes I would just sit on my bottom and, you know, bloop, 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 bloop down the river. And I get to the point where literally it looks like this hill is illuminated. This way. And I go, and that particular part of the crevice had these roots that were coming out at right angles, and I could actually use them as stepping stones to pull up, grab on, grab to the next one, pull up. And when I popped up, there was the frickin' trail. Now, what was interesting is that the switchbacks went back and forth, and then the bottom switchback went way over here and then continued down this way. So when I was cutting down, you know, going off trail, cutting down the switchbacks, I didn't realize that the switchbacks continued way over here. So I went down and then into the creek because the trail was following the creek. The creek then turned. So, you know, so I was, yeah, following the creek, which was actually in a way following the trail, but it was frightening. So when I got out, then my leg started to bleed horribly. I mean, gushing. It was filling my shoe. And I quickly took off, I had a bandana, and I created a tourniquet and limped my way down the rest of the mountain. When I came across my brother, the first person I knew I wanted to see was my brother, who's an EMT. And I really wanted to see him and make sure that he could help me. And he was the first person I saw, and he was headed up the mountain. He had just reached the cars and found out that I had gone missing, and decided to turn around and come back and find me. So what I hadn't realized had happened is my aunt and uncle are taking their time coming down the mountain, and they come across my husband and my cousin, who are taking turns carrying my dog off the mountain because she won't, it's too hot for her pads on the path. And so Scott, my husband, says, is everyone accounted for? No, my aunt says, is everyone accounted for? And everyone's come by, Scott says, except Cinda. And Margaret and John, my aunt and uncle, are like, well, we would have seen her and we didn't see her. And then my cousin says, well, I knew she went off trail to go to the bathroom, and told them where. So Scott turned around and my uncle turned around and went back up the mountain in 100-degree temperatures without water to go back up to find me. And then when Margaret and my cousin and my dog made it down the mountain, they told people that I hadn't been found. So my brother immediately ran back up with more water, Gatorade and everything. He was sprinting up the mountain. He had just hiked 12 miles. Everyone had just hiked 12 miles. And now they're looking for me. And I pop up between them. I pop up underneath Scott, headed back up the mountain, and my brother headed up. So yeah, anyway, I make it back to the car. They see that I'm delirious. They see that I'm in shock, and they immediately rushed me to the hospital. And it ended up that I broke my kneecap, and I dislocated my kneecap, broke a chip off my kneecap. And when it was dislocated, I broke a chip off the end of my femur bone. And yeah, so, and then on top of all of that, I got a blood clot because of the tourniquet, and had to deal with the serious illness, or not illness, but the side effects of the risk of a blood clot in my leg. So you're on mute, I think, Sharon, or you're quiet.
I'm quiet.
So wow, that's a story I haven't thought of for a while.
I'm listening and thinking pink. And thank you, Mike. Thank you for those we often discount, because our physical world is so real, is so with us, so everything's tactile. And it's not that it has no value, but it certainly is a limit. You know, like your family members went to search, and the limit of having to search and where do we look, and could have been astronomical, and is in many cases, like with your uncle.
Yeah.
And to be able to turn around, whether we turn around and say to the angels, lift me, or whether you say to Mike, you know the way now, you have seen bigger now, show me the way. You know, for me, it's like the takeaway is that there are a host of incredible beings, family members and angelics and guides and teachers, and those who have lived or not lived earth experience that exist, who see bigger, broader than we do, and bringing them in is our right, and they are there to be with us too.
Yeah, you know, that's so well said. What's interesting is I, purposely said and sent them waves of, I'm okay, I'm at the river, I'm okay, I'm at the river. And when I got to the bottom and they were feeding me with water and Gatorade and beer, my other brother said, you were at the river, weren't you? And I said, yes, I was. And he goes, yeah, you knew, I kept telling everyone, she's at the river, she's okay. She's at the river, she's okay. And he said the exact same thing that I was sending out.
Wow.
So he received it. And not only that, but Sharon, I think that there is something really important to the fact that I was not afraid.
Yes.
The delirium, the heat stroke, whatever it was that made me loopy. But I knew that I was in dire straits, that when I found the water and I found the shade, it almost felt like I was guided there to save me. Mm-hmm. I was guided to the shade and to the water to save me, even though that's where I got hurt, mm-hmm. even though that's where the danger was. But because I wasn't afraid, because there was so much bliss and joy, because I found shade and I found water, and as irrational as that might sound, or maybe it was because I was loopy, it was almost like I was made that way. Because when I started bleeding, what kind of animal would I have been attracting, right? I mean, who knows what was stalking me, if anything.
Exactly.
But because I wasn't fearful, right, and because I was truly experiencing excuse me, bliss and really joy of like, oh, this is so pretty, this is so beautiful, and there's water, and I'm cool, and there's shade, and I really think that protected me as well.
Mm-hmm.
That protected me. Had I been afraid, I'm not so sure I would have been able to have moved. I think people, when they're in fear, are frozen.
That's often what we do, is freeze, for sure.
Yeah, and no one would have been able to have found me.
Mm-hmm.
No one. I was completely buried under shrubs,
Mm-hmm.
and no one. I mean, unless they hiked up the trail. I mean, the river itself. Had I frozen, had I been seriously injured, and yeah, I don't know. The fact that that ended up being okay feels like there was divine intervention of some kind as
In it.
well.
Yes. Be all that we are, which is not only physical, but that essence we call spiritual of us too. Yeah.
Well, and I remember asking when I told you, I said, number one, I can't drive because my leg is in this, cast type thing. I also asked you, like, what was the take on this? I don't know if you remember.
No.
I know I took notes, but you had me do reality statements. You had me do healing work around the leg injury to help speed up the healing, and especially with the blood clot.
Yeah. Yeah. That is part of the recognition that if it shows up in our life, there is some kind of pattern, trauma, memory, energy frequency that is in our energy space that needs to be transformed, needs to be recognized, heard, and transformed. As we've talked about. I'm glad you're back on the mend and mended well.
Well, I don't want to just end the conversation with just me talking about a story unless there's a result of it. So, I guess it would be the fact that there's always this unseen realm of support, and to never, ever forget that or take it for granted. And like you said, it's not going to hurt to ask for help.
No.
And those of us that have experienced help know that it's real.
That's right.
Know that it's real.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, that is the reminder. We feel so alone when we're in our physical bodysuit at times, but we're never alone, because if we just turn, and there is this greater world.
Yeah.
And some of us have not been taught that. And so that you're right. That's a huge takeaway. So, hey, thank you for your presence.
Thank you.
I love you. Until next time.
I love you. Bye.
Bye.